Welcome to Engineering Wellbeing at Jiansheng, the podcast where we explore well-being as a system. Each month, one theme, 4 lenses: systems, technology, expertise, and culture with a Chinese perspective. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Engineering Wellbeing Podcast here at Jiansheng. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Ms. Stephanie Tebow, who has been in Beijing in education for a very long time. I will let her introduce herself very quickly, but I want to welcome you to the podcast where we engineer well-being. So, Stephanie Tebow, are you ready to engineer well-being?
I am indeed.
All right.
That sounds great. Hi. My name is Stephanie Tebow. Everybody calls me Tebow. That's how everybody knows me, not by Stephanie, obviously.
Yes, that's how I heard of you originally too.
And this makes my 20th year in Beijing.
20 years in Beijing.
Yeah, but my 25th year working abroad and in various parts of Asia. So, and when you said I'd been in education a long time, a long time kind of thing. I was just this morning thinking about that and thinking, oh my gosh, it's a really long time. I started my career as an educator when I was 21, and I've had the opportunity to work across the span of individual development and learning from pre-K all the way to adult and corporate training. So I've worked in all those areas of education in my between 44 and 45 years as an educator. It's a long time.
Wow. So you've had a lot of experience with youth. And
yes.
With our theme this month being youth generation, I know that you're an educator, but I also know that you have a lot of other abilities. Can you tell us a little bit about those other abilities that you kind of have contact with different age groups outside of education?
Well, outside of education, I've worked a lot in performing arts and theater and music, and I've directed youth choirs and directed kids camps for Beijing Playhouse here in Beijing even, and directed a number of shows, even in the school I'm at this year, or the last 5 years. Actually, I think this makes 6, sorry. Lose count sometimes, you know.
Yeah, with time, it just goes by so fast.
The recent couple of years, I've directed the school play for the high school or our secondary school. Year before last, it was a new experience for me, as it was The Tempest, Shakespeare. That was a stretch.
A little light on that.
I don't really teach Shakespeare, so that was quite a stretch. And then this last year, we did the Addams Family musical, which was great fun, and the kids were brilliant. And we had kids all the way from upper primary, from grade 5 all the way through grade 12.
Working together.
Along with a lot of adults in the school. So quite a community project, which I really like.
Wow.
So seeing people, integrate across age groups is really an important part of people's development. It's too easy to get stuck with your own age group, and then just to kind of begin to not be able to see the bigger picture. And so, and of course, I've worked with kids at summer camps. I did a lot of summer camps back in the day.
You have a great personality for that, I would say.
Mostly at summer camp, they just tell me how hot they are. They won't go to sleep because they're so hot. So I make them sing Jingle Bells, and then they all start to cool down and go to sleep, so it works. And then of course in schools, like now I work with Beijing World Youth Academy, where I am the designated safeguarding leader for the school and lead a team of designated safeguarding staff members to oversee child protection and wellness. We do, safeguarding, we do a lot with wellness. We don't just look at, is a child being harmed, but is the child well, and are they thriving? And of course, I'm over the counseling. I have the counseling department, DSL, learning support under my umbrella of what we do for well-being and taking care of children. And so we get I get a real clear view, right, of what's going on with kids today, K to 12. And been, the last 5-6 years have made huge changes in children in school. And they're noting it and talking about it, writing about it, and researching it all over the world.
Wow. I think we're quite fortunate to have your broad experience in just about everything with today's youth to have this conversation today.
Sure.
And so Stephanie, in this podcast, what we like to do, the reason we call it Well-Being or Engineering Wellbeing Podcast is because we look at different aspects, and today we're talking about kind of society. And we kind of identify some issues that might need some engineering.
Yes.
And we invite on specialist guests to help us kind of dissect what are those issues. And then we connect it to well-being, and we kind of lead by giving hope to our audience. And so I think you are a perfect guest for this.
Oh, good. I hope I can do that. Yeah.
And so to start, I have a clip that I want to show you.
Sure.
This clip is from Dr. Ross Greene. And this is from a few years ago. It's just about 1 or 2 minutes. And it's an introduction of something that I would like us and like your help in engineering. Okay, so let's have a quick look.
Great.
I think if you're working with kids in general, but challenging kids in particular, you need a philosophy. Who is this kid? What's he about? What's he up to? If he's up to anything. Because you see, your philosophy is going to guide your actions, especially when the going gets tough. No philosophy, no guide. The most important theme of collaborative problem solving is this one. Kids do well if they can. Now, nobody ever falls off their chair at the sight of kids do well if they can. It's only an earth-shattering philosophy. If you consider a much more popular alternative philosophy that floats around out there called kids do well if they wanna. Now, kids do well if they can, and kids do well if they wanna are two completely different philosophies. And they have completely different ramifications for what you're going to do to or with this kid to make things better. Let's think about kids do well if they wanna for a second. If you've got a kids do well if they wanna mentality and you're working with a kid who's not doing well, then the reason you think he's not doing well by virtue of your philosophy is because he doesn't wanna. I've been thinking about kids do well if they wanna for a long time, and here's the conclusion I've come up with about kids do well if they wanna. It's wrong. Flat out, dead wrong. I ask myself, why would any kid not want to do well? Don't all of us do the best we can in the circumstances we find ourselves in? Well, the kids do well if they wanna mentality has those questions covered with concepts like secondary gain, attention seeking, unmotivated, coercive, limit testing. We're gonna have those babies put to bed by around 11 a.m. this morning. When you really think about them, they don't make much sense. When you really put them to the test, they don't make a great deal of sense. But let's say they do make sense. Even if kids do well if they wanna is right, and now you know I think it's wrong, it's narrow. Because you see, it greatly narrows the role that you can play in the life of a kid who's not doing well. Because if you think a kid isn't doing well because he doesn't wanna, I can only think of one thing for you to do, only one role for you to play in the life of this kid. Make him wanna. And we have the technology for making kids wanna. How do you make a kid wanna? You reward the behaviors you like and you punish the behaviors you don't. You give him the incentive to do well based on the belief that he didn't have the incentive to do well in the first place, and you are now in the business of making kids wanna. I sure do hope you're right about why he's not doing well, because if you're wrong, and you're busy making a kid wanna, and he already does wanna, you run the risk of making things worse, or at the very least, not being as helpful as you might have wanted to be. I'm a kids do well if they can guy. I think if this kid could do well, he would do well. Something must be getting in his way. Your role just changed. Your role just changed. You've just flipped from thinking a kid isn't doing well because he doesn't wanna, and therefore thinking that your role in the life of this kid is to make him wanna, to something a lot harder, and in my experience, a lot more productive. You've just shifted to kids do well if they can, and what's your main role now? Figure out what's getting in his way. Then you can help him. You can't help him if you don't know what's getting in his way. Biggest favor you can do a challenging kid is to finally, at long last, be the person who figures out what's getting in his way. Because you see, if he's still challenging, it's a pretty surefire bet. Nobody's figured it out yet.
It's got to be exactly what the curriculum says. Does it? I think we need to expand our thinking a bit. I think this applies in many areas of their learning, everything from their social, their EQ, to their physical, bodies building and developing, to how they're thinking critically, and examining things. Anyway, you can see that process happens a lot. And I think that's where that idea of they learn if they wanna comes in. That's why people have that philosophy, because what they see is, I want you to learn this, but you wanna learn that, so that means you don't wanna learn this, right? And I think we sometimes mix that up a little bit in education across the board, not every school I've ever been in, you know. I do see a lot of schools trying very hard to open the doors on that, and I also see things like, particular curriculums like IB, A levels, whatever, trying to open the doors on that and give a broader view, right? Instead of getting too confined into one particular thing a child must learn. There are things they do need to learn. They need to learn to add and subtract, and they need to learn to write and read, and
but
those things
But
you see, I think obviously, and the one thing you can certainly see, like in English and language curriculums, whether that's for a second language learner or a native language learner, is the idea that why don't we give them lots of options of what to read and see what we come up with from that, to learn the reading, and everybody can see the impact of that on literacy. It raises literacy, right? So I think the wanna is misguided, but I understand where it comes from. Right? Every kid wants to learn. They want to learn. They feel empowered when they learn. They feel equal. They have equity when they learn. Now, some kids face some learning challenges. Doesn't mean they can't learn. They just learn differently. And there's ways to help them do that. And we need to not be afraid of doing that. Too many parents are afraid to identify that and then deal with it. And then that child gets to the point where they actually don't want to learn because they don't have a toolbox with which to learn. Not their fault. Nobody wants to identify, they'll be labeled. No, they'll be helped. And there's the difference. Once upon a time, maybe labeled, but in this day and age, not so much. Yeah,
I was going to say, with your expertise, Tebow, you've seen a lot. And so I was going to say, can you just share with us maybe a story of something where you can remember or recall a time where a child wanted to learn, but there were some external things in their environment that made it a little more challenging?
Well, let me not tell a specific story, because I've seen that a lot. And I'm sure you too, you've also seen that in your work, right? You see the kids where there are external factors, especially factors around stress or trauma or fear of some sort, that really get in the way of their learning. I've seen kids with dyslexia that until we could get a diagnosis and then we could do what we needed to do based on the type of dyslexia, that may have gotten in their way, but only for a time. What gets in their way most is if a parent won't allow people to learn what it is, the challenge, right? It's not an illness, it's not a disorder, it's not a disability, it's just a challenge, just like if I need eyeglasses to see, right? It's really not much different than that, right? We just need to know what we can do. But what I often see is this idea that everybody around me, their happiness depends on my success academically. And this is overwhelming, right? I have to do this to make other people happy. I have to do this or my family will hate me, or they won't be kind to me, or they will criticize me, or beat me, or just throw me away and give me no attention. There's that. And that's one of the big ones I see, and people might think I'm speaking specifically of Asia, but I'm not, because I have seen that in every country I've ever worked in, including the US, where a child's performance at school or their behavior at school or everything has to do with how they made their parents look.
That
you know?
external success factor.
Yeah, or their grandparents look or something. And that's a huge pressure on a child, and it misdirects the child. It teaches the child a very negative set of values. This guy said, you've got to have a philosophy. I would disagree with him there. What you really got to have is a set of values that guide a child, right? And if my value is to make everybody else happy, I am going to fail because I can't make another human being happy. Neither can you,
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah.
And so now what I've done is I've set my child or my student up for failure. I can remember as a young teacher how I would say something like, boys and girls, if you want to make Miss Tebow happy, then you'll do A, B, C. And one day I heard myself and I thought, oh my gosh, Tebow, stop that. That is so counter to what you even believe, right? So then I stopped saying that and I would say, boys and girls, if we want to have a good classroom community together and we want to accomplish something together, we better look at doing A, B, C. Well, that was a whole different, that was a game changer.
Wow. Yeah, I think what you've identified is something that's quite important. So this idea of external success and that linking to the forgotten piece of internal well-being. So why do you think society emphasizes this external success so much but neglects the internal well-being?
Well, here's the thing. Whether you're a U.S. citizen, a Chinese citizen, a British citizen, or a Kenyan citizen, everybody says you are what you do. That's untrue. That's it's how we live.
Yeah.
And what you produce determines your value.
Oh.
And that's not true either.
Interesting.
It may determine what your salary is, but it does not determine much other than that, right? It certainly does not determine your value. And but we live there. The world lives there, unfortunately. And it's a very bad value system in that it undermines well-being. In consequence of that is that we just see people will say kids aren't as resilient today as they used to be. Well,
I do hear that a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
I do hear
a lot.
that a lot.
And there are some issues around resilience because if you're in a home or a situation whereby what determines your value is how good are your marks in school, right?
Yeah.
Then you won't have much resilience because you're only focused on this one thing, right?
Yeah.
And you're not having to do other things. Life has changed a lot. So, I see kids where it's a real balanced family. So, for example, the child has chores they have to do. Feed the dog, take out the trash, pick up their own clothes, whatever. Nobody waits on them hand and foot just so they can make A's. So they spend all their time working on making an A. Those kids will have a lot more resilience than a child who just locks away in their room and their only role is to make grades because they build no other skill sets. And now they don't even build the tools with which they need to truly succeed academically. In other words, to gain knowledge that becomes wisdom because they know what to do with it. Because with no experience, all that knowledge is useless. It's just knowledge. It's just a library, right?
Wow.
But if I begin to do things, use that knowledge for things like everything from, when they're little, sort your socks by colors and fold them and then put them together. And then do the colors from lightest to darkest. Now that sounds like an art project, but it isn't. It's critical thinking. It's process thinking. It's all the things you need to be resilient, right? When a child says, I want something, and the parent says, oh, let me buy it for you, or let me do it for you, so you can study, no resilience. Mom, I want to hang a curtain over that window. Okay, so what do you think you're going to do to make that happen?
Wow.
What can you find around here to make that happen?
Yeah, and make them think.
Yeah, and they become resourceful, which creates resilience, and it creates a sense of confidence. So I was talking to someone the other day who is a teacher now, who said that she had to start helping her family cook when she was in the 3rd grade for every meal because it was a big family and everybody had to chip in.
Yeah.
So, for her, when she got out of high school and was moving on to do other things, she never felt the first fear about going out on her own, fixing her own meals, washing her own clothes, taking care of her own house. She never felt the first fear about it. Why? Because she already had those skills.
Yeah, it was part of her
She was resilient, right?
Wow.
And I use those very concrete things because it's also true of not so concrete things. How do I communicate to people? How do I build social relationships? So like those kids who help with the chores, go out to be in some other kinds of clubs and classes that are not just about winning or being the star or whatever, just about doing it together, like teamwork. That's not academic,
And a lot of that's been lost.
Yeah, a lot. And of course we lost even more during COVID because nobody could go out at all, So yeah, and I think that's had an awfully huge impact on what we're seeing right now in schools.
So with that being said, COVID and kind of even the current situation, as we kind of start unpacking this, what are some common signs that maybe something is off balance?
Well, we're seeing a lot, and it's being written about around the world. Asia, of course, faced the most extreme and the longest periods of quarantine. And of people being out of touch with each other, and kids being online for school with the same kids that used to be in person. So one of the big things we're seeing, whether you're a child or an adult, is this kind of attachment disorder. I've worked a lot with attachment disorders when I was in private practice as a counselor. But you're seeing this kind of attachment disorder in that all the people that used to be my friends and that I'm online with, and of course, let's add to this social media, the effects of social media. Let me not leave that out. It's not COVID alone, it's COVID and social media put together. If you look at that, what you see is that the people I used to be close to, and I could see them online, the minute I'm in person with them, they become a threat rather than a friend. Here, it's subconscious. I'm not always, it's just here. It's that amygdala, this part of the brain where your amygdala is sending the, danger, 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 there's a real life person next to you, right? And so what you see even is that robust play among small children becomes violent play pretty quick. I'm just playing, and then all of a sudden it's a full out act of violence against each other. But you see it in adults as well. And, the divorce rate after COVID let everybody out was really, really high, but it stayed high. And we've been out of COVID for several years now, right? So people are seen as a threat. Still, some people see any foreigner in their world, whether it's China or America, any foreigner, you must have been the cause of COVID. You're a threat to me. You need to stay away. So it's caused a lot of, I think, ethnic issues between peoples that used to not be afraid of somebody different than themselves.
Because it was just an online kind of a protection.
But even online, they may not have seen any other body that looked any different from them.
Oh, that is very interesting to observe that balance point. Now that's mental, but I know we were just talking before the show.
Yeah.
There's also some physical things happening, especially in the primary school.
Yeah, there's been some research, and I was just reading some research yesterday and today about how early puberty is starting, and that it's a direct relation to the stress hormones that were caused during COVID, and that children still have trauma from that, and they have this stressor. So now puberty, in the 1800s didn't start till 16 or 17. Young women didn't start having growing breasts or having menses until that age, right? And then, of course, by the time we got to my generation in like the mid 50s when I was born, that generation you would see puberty come on 13, 14, 15, right?
Middle
and it's easiest to measure in girls because they have the most obvious signs of these hormonal changes. Boys don't have so many yet, unless, they'll start growing hair on their body and they'll start developing some muscle, but primarily their voices might start to change a bit, but not usually at age, it's still a little later.
Yeah.
But boys have always been a little bit later than girls in puberty. But now, currently, the common age for girls to begin puberty and menses is between 8 and 9.
8 and 9 years old.
Yeah, the research is showing this. And they've been looking at all the factors of this. Now, some are environmental factors. What are the toxins kids are exposed to today around the world? Part of it is diet, has to do with processed foods around the world. This is everywhere. We're not just talking about Beijing, right? But the bigger factor is what was the most intense impact on hormonal changes in children, and it was the stress impact on hormones during COVID. So,
that is very interesting.
yeah, and if you look at if you look at places like the Child Mind Institute, that's done tons of research on this, and Child Mind Institute doing research on it long before there was COVID, this kind of because of all the online interactions, right? And they've got great research on this that shows that we should have expected this. If we'd really been watching that, we would have known it before COVID. But we, how you don't always read that stuff till about that time anyway. And then now if you look at those effects on the social interaction between young people and adults and even small children, then you look at the physical aspects. So one other physical aspect of COVID is obesity.
Yes.
So the rise of obesity in children. Yeah, they couldn't go anywhere, they couldn't do anything. Now kids don't even want to go outside and play.
Yeah, even their waist muscles development,
yeah.
they can't sit because the muscles in their
right.
lower back.
And the lung development, they can't breathe well, so they don't have good breathing, and this affects hormones, and this affects body composition, and this affects development, physical development. So there's just so many factors right now on kids that have absolutely nothing to do with their schoolwork, but absolutely affect their lives in school a lot.
Oh, so it goes back to that issue of kind of external environment and tying it into internal well-being. Wow.
But the thing is, then when it affects the schoolwork, then you have that effect now on that whole wanna or will, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I have to say, sometimes kids are up against so many things: physical changes, changes that have made them sedentary, that have undermined brain function. The more sedentary they are, the less brain function. It's not that they're not smart, it's just how it affects the way the brain works, right? If they're gaining weight, it's the hormonal, fat releases a lot of hormones. But now I see kids so afraid of fat that we have eating disorders as early as grade 3. Serious issues with bulimia and with anorexia.
Yeah.
Now listen, a kid between grade 8 and grade 12 should be hungry.
Yes, yeah.
And they should be eating, and they should be eating well. And it's okay for them to have a snack, and it's okay for them to weigh a regular weight. They shouldn't be bony. They need that. They do need that fat. If you get to obese, not normal weight, but right now I see a lot of people gauge normal weight as too fat, right?
And sometimes even in the clinics and the medical institutions, they will, depending on body types, they will also tell you you're overweight when actually you're at a
normal weight,
yeah.
right? And you should be at that weight, and you should be hungry, and you should be eating 3, maybe even 5 times a day. If they're athletes or dancers or anything like that, boy, they probably should be eating about 5 times a day. Now that doesn't mean they're eating a 3-course meal 5 times a day, but it means that they're eating a high protein breakfast, a high protein, probably high protein and carbs for lunch, and then a balanced, lighter but still balanced dinner of carbs and protein, vegetables, getting vitamins, and then a couple of snacks in the day. And just let me say, those snacks can include chocolate and crisps and donuts. You're not going to eat that every day, and you're not going to eat a lot of it, but it's okay. They want to eat pizza, they want to eat a donut. All right, there's no reason to build fear and anxiety around food, as well as all the other things that are causing anxiety for children.
Wow, so that is a lot to unpack as far as engineering. So for those watching in the comments, we've talked about quite a bit. Let us know your thoughts. Type them in the comments for us. And so Tebow, we've kind of explored quite a bit. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts because you've mentioned that you've been in China for over 20 years. How do you see this in the China context? Is it the same? Is it a little different? Are there things that are unique to China as far as this well-being aspect?
I first came to China in 1996. This was my first introduction to China when I came in to teach teachers about interactive teaching methodologies here in China. And then eventually I moved here to work on some various projects with kids in schools and educational development, and work with Peking University for a long while. And then I began working in the mental health profession here, which I had done in the States for a long time, and started building and training counselors for China, and then in private practice as well. So, like I said, lots of teaching across lots of areas. Always, though, working still with the K-12 group of students as well as university students. Always keeping teaching roles there one way or another. But
to keep that connection.
Yeah, but with that said, back in '96, I would have said to you, China, Beijing, first tier, second tier cities were much different than anywhere else you could go in the world. Night and day difference in cultural expectations, in the way people lived, in the way they ate, in the way they interacted with one another. Very, very different, you know. So when I came in 1996, you and I could not have touched each other because you were a man and I was a woman. So if I would have pat you on the back, it would have caused a great drama among our friends. You know, if I had walked arm in arm with you, like I might in the U.S. because we're friends, right? That would have sent signals everywhere that you and I were probably lovers, right? This would have been a real scandal. Thank you. Yeah. But and then the same would have been true of how people ate and how they gathered. Some of the things that went on here were, I thought, refreshing compared to the U.S., right? I thought it was refreshing that you weren't, there wasn't quite so much boyfriend-girlfriend thing in my classrooms, you know, kids, they weren't so distracted by that, right? I really appreciated that there was a sense of honor and care among people. At the same time, there was a sense of competition, right? There was both. Some of it good, some of it not.
Healthy competition,
right?
Some of it.
But one of the things that always concerned me, I think when I looked at things, was that a child's whole life was about studying. If you were in a first-tier city, that was all it was about. Now, if I went out to third-tier cities and your dad was a farmer, you were out helping the farm, right?
You've been missing school.
You were getting physically strong. And it used to worry me that my students in the university were not as strong as their old lady teacher, Miss Tebow. You know, they couldn't walk as far, they couldn't do as much. You know, they'd be like, "Oh, Miss Tebow, I'm so exhausted. How did you do that?" You know, and so I would think, "Oh, wow, they don't have the physical development of musculature, of cardiopulmonary development that I had." Growing up as a kid, where all we did was play.
Yeah,
you know, you go to school,
play
but then you play. That's right. You just got home, you played till your mom and dad called you in for dinner. You know, so and I saw that difference because that will undermine the thinking process, and that will undermine life success, and that will undermine healthy relationship because you're physically unwell. You're not physically strong.
And that connection.
Yeah, I do see us returning, that in China, in Beijing particularly, parents are quite aware that their children need physical activity today. And you see them wanting their children to have physical activity, sometimes maybe too much, but everybody's got to decide that for themselves. And also those still concerned with the grades. So to find the balance. But to be honest, I don't know that that's so different from China to anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? The balance. I just experienced this particular struggle with balance for people more than anywhere else. And so I think that's one of the things I see. One of the things in China is still the great misunderstandings of how the body functions and what foods actually create high-functioning bodies and high-functioning minds. There's still a real big departure between what the science can prove and what is still presented as healthy and strength-building and mind-building here. They're quite different, and that's unfortunate. I think that's got a long way to go, even though there's been huge medical advancements in China. Compared to where we were 20-some years ago, in 1996, And so you see a lot of things here. I mean, if I look at like TCM and Western medicine, you'd like to blend them because they both have advantages and they both have disadvantages. But if I just look at general consult, you know, you see that there's a gap in the information and the research knowledge. from the east to
the
east to the
TCM
west
versus
at this
the west.
point. Yeah, not even TCM, in their Western approach here, in
okay.
international hospitals and things, I still see a departure. And that's unfortunate. And I work with a lot of those doctors because I've often worked in tandem with those doctors with children with severe eating disorders and how to help those children come back from that. But an eating disorder is not just about food. That's an emotional thing. That's a child looking for some control in their life. That's an adult looking for some control in their life. They can't control anything else, so they control their intake of food and what food they intake, yeah.
Now with the youth, because you brought kind of this issue of control, just a question that's kind of popped into my mind. If you were to take kind of a China approach versus outside of China approach to the question of what does a school owe a family? What are your thoughts?
Gosh, I work with families a lot. So, here is the thing. We owe them, first of all, we owe them offering their child the best possible educational experience we can give. And that means teachers that are qualified and care about those children, teachers who provide strong curriculums that are interactive and experiential, and a classroom that is well managed so children can learn. Not a crazy classroom. Now, some classrooms are better if they seem crazy to you and me if we see them from the outside, but it's really organized chaos and they're learning a lot. But I'm talking about places that are not constantly disrupted by behaviors, negative behaviors.
They have a feeling of safety.
Safety, absolutely.
Yeah.
And second, we owe them a safe place to be. So this means that we look out for the child's physical well-being, their emotional well-being, their social well-being, and that we make sure the facility is safe, right? Because some places, I've seen schools around the world where the facility is not real safe and not conducive to learning. I've been in that situation where I was teaching kids in a classroom that was big enough for 15 students, but I had 29. If there was a fire, they couldn't all get out. You know what I mean?
Wow,
they couldn't have. They were jammed in there. There's just no way. So I look at that and I think, not at my current school, by the way, it's a long time ago. A long time ago. My current school, everybody could really get out. We got plenty of room. That's the good news. But I think the reality is we do owe them that. And we owe kids quality education, quality opportunities to learn. We owe them teachers that care about them and find ways to individualize what they're learning to the way they learn best. Now that doesn't mean that it's customized for every single child, because that's not possible in a classroom, but things that give children opportunities to learn in multiple styles, so that every child has a way, right? Yeah. And on individual assignments, making latitude for where this child can grow the most, right?
Wow.
Or how they grow the most. We owe them that. We owe parents and we owe the children really good discipline in a school. Now, some people hear discipline, like you got to slap my kid around. I've had, over the years, I've had parents say, well, here's what you do with my kid. You just slap them and now stop doing that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to slap your kid. That's not
it's a little different time, yes. Okay.
And I've asked the kids sometimes, what do I need to do to get you to behave in this way? And the kids have written it down in private, and given it back to me. And half of them will say, you need to beat us. That's what our parents do, and that's when we behave, if we are beaten. And I would say to them, you guys, first of all, I'm not your parent. I'm not going to beat you. Second of all, I think you don't have to wait to be beaten. I think we can identify when you need to behave differently, make a new choice. But I think good, strong, clear consequences are important. And today, this is true. Some parents don't want any consequences. Some parents want consequences we are not open to. And I think it's about the school laying out a real clear attitude and identify exactly what's going to happen. If this happens, right? And for example, violence cannot be tolerated on any level. Violence is not the response or the answer to anything. And if schools don't address it, then kids begin to believe that's the way to go forward. And there are many parents that will tell you, well, when I was in school, people were violent all the time to each other. It's just a rite of passage. That may be true.
But
maybe
that
how it was
doesn't
seen.
make it,
But hopefully we're a little more enlightened now, and we don't do that. So I think it's laying out good understanding of what's going to happen, and then between you and me, partnering with parents. You can't leave parents out of the equation. You need to partner with the parents. Yeah.
Have you found that there's a difference in the way to partner with parents within China and outside of China? Or
No,
is it still a parent is a parent?
Yeah, it's really the same. I mean, I think culturally there might be some differences in how you say it, but what's being done is the same. And I think one of the things I've seen in China, maybe even more than in America, is how much parents appreciate the partnership, because often they'll say, I just don't know what else to do. Well, of course they don't. Nobody knows what to do with their own kid. It's always easier from the outside to see what we might need to do, right? And it's easier to have someone to collaborate with than to just be on your own, which is why things like positive discipline classes and parent coaching, family coaching is so valuable today, to get to the bottom of it and get it figured out and then be able to put a new strategy in place. I've had parents come back to me and say, you've changed our life at home.
Yeah, there's a relationship between that school-parent partnership.
And they've got something they can do, and they feel like, okay, if I don't do it perfect the first time and it doesn't work, I can call Tebow or the counselor or whoever and run it over with them. And you have to get away from expecting instant results. Nobody changes instantly. And you got to get out of the, I need to fix my kid. No. You need to manage that relationship. You need to build connection. So whatever you need to do can be heard and can be valued as a part of the relationship, versus I'm just doing what I have to do to make them stop talking to me or lecturing me or hitting me or whatever it is. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Tebow, we're almost out of time. But before we get to your practical tips, because that's an important part of the engineering well-being, is getting the tips and actually getting the engineering part in. We have a tradition here where we get questions from our viewers, and we call it just a rapid fire round.
Okay.
And so we're just going to ask you some lighthearted questions.
Okay.
No right or wrong, just whatever you think.
Right.
Okay. So first question, what do you do to recharge?
For me, it's about music, playing the piano. It's about doing some artistic things, maybe painting, which I'm terrible, but I enjoy doing. And sometimes just to be alone. It's real good for me.
All right. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is a book called The Eclipse of God.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Sounds like a good read.
It is.
All right. And final rapid fire question. Do you think expectations for today's youth are realistic or unrealistic?
Unrealistic. Expectations, other people's expectations. I think I have great hope for the youth of today. They're brilliant. They're genius. They're creative. They're, they think outside the box. The kids I see, that's good. I like to see that. And I know that there's hope for tomorrow when we have that. But the expectations that people have on the youth with regards to how they change, how fast they change, what changes they need, those expectations are not very realistic.
Wow. Very honest and candid. I thank you for that. And so my final question to you before we get into our closing comments, we've kind of unpacked a lot today.
Yeah.
What are one or two practical tips that you would give to our youth, to our family, and to our community, just to help get that balance back into well-being?
Yeah, put your phone and your computer away for a couple of hours a day.
Thumbs up.
Really, and connect with people face-to-face, one-on-one. And stop believing everything that comes over social media and everything that comes over your computer and everything you read. If you're not, we try hard to teach our kids to check sources and be sure they're the real deal, but not everybody does that. The computer and social media, you have to understand it is not safe, so you must take very good care of how you use it. If you just got in a car and went driving it and without regard for anything around you, you'll be dead pretty quick, right? So it's the same thing with anything that we use for convenience. Nothing's 100% safe. And to think of it as safe is what makes you the most unsafe.
Wow. Well, thank you for all you've said today, Stephanie.
You're
welcome. If you could just look in the camera right there, and if there's anything you would like to tell our viewers to give them some hope or to let our youth know that well-being is important, please do so.
I think it's so important that you take care of your body, that you sleep and you eat well, and that you prioritize your health, but in conjunction with that you prioritize connection. And I say that because where we see the most well-being being compromised is because people have so much fear of others and they don't have safe places with others. So I encourage you, if you're a parent, spend time with your kid, get to know, listen, stop talking and listen. And kids, get with your mom and dad. They understand more about you than you think, and they can't wait to know who you are so that you have a connection for a lifetime, not just today. So connect.
Very powerful.
Good.
Thank you for helping us engineer well-being, Stephanie Tebow.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.
And we will leave contact information. If you have any comments, please put them in the box. We thank you for joining us at the Engineer Wellbeing Podcast here at Jinshan. And this is your host, Gerald Anthony, saying goodbye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Stephanie Tebow. All right. Thank you very much. Engineering Wellbeing at Jinshan. It's about creating bridges between the biology, psychology, and social with a China perspective, where humans can function at their full potential.